Right, so today I'm going to a topic that I really have wanted to cover for a while, and that is the fighting games that I'm actually going to invest time in the most now. Um, kind of took a little break from making videos and being in the fighting community, so I was doing a project, starting a project that I'm doing now with the guitar because I am much more dedicated to the guitar uh, for my whole life than I've ever been to video games. Although video games would take probably the second spot, but I believe that the important thing that came out of that is that I realized that the guitar in many ways reflects the reasons why I like old school fighting games. And the way I play the guitar and the things I don't do with the guitar, also the way I like the challenge of playing guitar. I'm not interested in playing Guitar Hero, for example, because I know how to play the real guitar, right? I like the challenge of actually being able to play really complex stuff, and I've learned a lot of complex music. I've reached a level in guitar that is above average, I would say. That reminds me of the reason, like I said before, the reason why I love old school fighting games. To me, modern fighting games feel like Guitar Hero. Like you're not really playing the guitar, you're pretending to play the guitar. Same goes with these modern fighting games. And I know a lot of people are gonna go like, yeah, you're just a dinosaur, you're not evolving, you grew up with the old school stuff, that's why you love it. But that is not the case. I will give you a perfect example of a game that is not from the 90s or the early 2000s, and I love it. I know Virtual Fighter 5 is already an old game, but if you look at it in the perspective of how old Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is, or Third Strike and Capcom versus SNK, if you look at that game from that perspective, it's quite new, right? And to me, the only fighting game that is better than all the old 2D fighting games is Virtual Fighter 5. That brings me back to what I was saying about the guitar and old school games and modern games. I like the complexity of playing guitar, the challenge of having to spend a long time being able to play something. And modern fighting games don't ever feel like I'm being rewarded for spending a long time. Street Fighter 6 does not feel like a rewarding game. I started to find myself just going back to the game because they brought in a character that I liked. And I really liked Ed. When Ed came out, I was like, this character is so good. I'm gonna keep giving Street Fighter 6 a chance. I just got into that feeling that I was just playing the game because a new character came out. I was already done with the game. And I thought when I saw Ed, I thought, I'm not gonna like this character either. If he's anything like Street Fighter 5, I'm gonna hate Ed. But he's nothing like Street Fighter 5. And if Ed was in a game that was built old school, he would be my favorite character ever. Because he is one of my favorite characters ever made, regardless of the game that he is in. Ed from Street Fighter 6, specifically. Can't stand Ed in Street Fighter 5. So, getting back to the whole thing about just being fed up with Street Fighter 6 and feeling like I was being forced to play Guitar Hero, instead of playing the guitar, the real guitar. So when I go back to ST, to Third Strike, or to CBS2, I feel like I'm playing the guitar because just like in the guitar, it took me a long time to get good at these games. I had to be disciplined about it in terms of having to learn how to use proper technique, which in the guitar is, the legatos, the vibrato, the alternate picking, the sweep picking, all of those techniques that help you become a better guitar player. And in fighting games, that translates to the combos, to being able to do things properly, to making the most out of every opening, right? Doing the most damage, having your combos polished, knowing what combos to use in what situation, etc., right? Precision. And then you add the flavor to it, which is the mind games and the footsies and the guitar. That's the creative aspect of it. Now you know how to use the guitar, then you just go and create music with it, right? And like I said, comparing a guitar to old school fighting games, it's perfect. It requires that you take your time. It's not gonna be rewarding from the very beginning. Let's be honest, Street Fighter 6, all you need is like 2 weeks of hard training to really get into a character's hardest combos, right? Not like the fanciest, flashiest ever, but the hardest combos that are competitive and useful in competition by most people, right? So high level guitar is something that requires a lot of commitment, a lot of time. You're gonna put a lot of time into it. The same goes with old school fighting games. So you kind of have to earn your rewards in those old school fighting games. Not just in the technical aspect of it, but also with the gameplay. You really have to be able to understand so much stuff, but at the same time, your ability to play mind games is way more relevant. And the 50-50s are not that common. If you go into a match in a game and it's much more about reactions, and there's no set play involved basically in a game like Third Strike. There's basically no set play in Third Strike. It's the most beautiful thing because the parry system completely gets rid of that. And you can't just play a certain way and go into training mode and expect to be a top player by putting them in the blender, like they say. Just put this guy in the blender and he's done. In Third Strike, the parry system really changes that. If your opponent, when they're waking up, can read what you're planning to do and they parry, you're in for a world of hurt, right? So there's much more risk that you're taking by trying to put someone in the blender. Tables can be turned really fast. With ST, it's a very, very high reaction footsie based game. Regardless of what people say, even high levels, even Honda, Dictator, Claw, pretty much every character that seems to skip the neutral, they still have to play the neutral in most of their matchups in some way or another. These old school games, the only ones that I really care for, like seriously care for, are Super Turbo, Third Strike, and CVS2, in that order. And the only game in general that I like more than those three games is Virtua Fighter 5, which is a way more modern title that came way after those games came out. It's pretty obvious the community has started to show the lack of love that they have for these modern games. It's pretty obvious that it's different. Some people go, no, but everyone complained when Street Fighter came out, when Street Fighter 4 came out, everyone said it was crap. And then 5 came out, and everyone said it was crap, and the 4 was better. And then 6 came out, and everyone said 5 was crap. That's not true. There's a big, big difference between how many people disliked Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6, and how many people disliked Street Fighter 4. Huge difference. I don't remember, honestly, I don't remember in the times of Street Fighter 4, endless forum topics, endless videos talking about how Street Fighter 4 was trash and Third Strike is way better. Certainly some people said Third Strike is better to me and I prefer it. I still prefer Third Strike because of the parry system, because of the way the game feels, etc. But there wasn't a huge debate that was basically splitting the community in two, like the debates that we're seeing now with Street Fighter 6 and 5. Since 5, I felt it. I remember when 4 came out, I wasn't really playing it much, but I never thought, I don't like Street Fighter 4, it's crap. I just preferred the old school games. But I never, when I did try Street Fighter 4, I liked it a lot. And I thought it was a great game. And I never felt that way about Street Fighter 5. And with Street Fighter 6, I got caught up in the initial thoughts that I had regarding the footsies and the drive system. I got caught up in all that stuff and I kind of let it slide. That I started to feel like, oh, this is just Street Fighter 5 with a new system. I didn't want to admit that, but it is Street Fighter 5 in many ways. Street Fighter 6 is governed by the same rules and the same type of gameplay that Street Fighter 5 had. If Drive Rush wasn't in the game, or if it cost 4 bars to use it, it would be a completely different game. But Capcom doesn't want that, and some people just don't want to admit it. Capcom wants a game that allows you to feel like the king of fighters. No pun intended. But it allows you to feel like you're the king of the fighting world. Oh man, I used to be so bad at old school games, but now I'm really feeling it, you know? It's like I lock these people down and I don't let them breathe and I just demolish them. And it gives you that feeling. Street Fighter 6 does give you that feeling. And it doesn't matter who you're fighting, how good they are. If you get lucky and if you catch a guy that is really good, you catch him first, you already put him in a blender situation. It doesn't matter how good he is. He is going to have to guess. And that really makes the game bad because the drive rush is always there to help you go back into it if you failed your opportunity of Oki and your opponent guessed right. You still get to keep going at it if you know how to use your drive gauge. So it's just a game that just doesn't feel like something that inspires me in any way. It just feels like the same thing every time I play. And it doesn't feel that way with old school games. Every round, everything feels like you're doing things differently. And this happens way more in Third Strike and ST, but you also see it in CBS too. Those 3 games are the heart, the core of the FGC in 2D, in the 2D community, right? And I know Tekken is the favorite in the 3D community, but to me the heart and soul of the 3D world is Virtual Fighter. And not because of popularity, but because of the value of playing that game and learning it at high level. The patience and the dedication that it takes to do that. It's crazy. It's just like ST and Third Strike. You need to commit to those games for years and years. And that is the reward of the old school. So it's more like learning chess. It's more like learning guitar. Like I was getting to the guitar and the comparisons between the guitar and playing fighting games. It's about the reward. You can't just play guitar for a couple of months and be a master of the instrument, right? You're not gonna play for a couple of months and go out there and start playing Alan Holdsworth music. It's just not gonna happen. You're gonna have to play for years and years and years to get to that point. Or to play like someone like Guthrie Govan. You know, it's like it's ridiculously difficult to get there. And you need to play for decades to actually achieve that level of play in every sense of the word. That right there is the reward of the old school games that we love so much. And I will always give those games the priority that they deserve with my content. Super Turbo, Third Strike, CVS 2, and Virtual Fighter in the 3D realm, and when it comes out, Virtual Fighter 6. I will give it a chance. But regardless of what happens with that, the games that are going to be constant, the games that I'm going to play, I'm no longer going to waste a single minute of my time with Street Fighter 6. And if you are, then good for you. If you feel it's a game that it entertains you, great. But I started to notice that in my case, it was more of a thing where I was being forced back into the game with the DLC character. And a good way to explain it is when the game came out, you know, I played it for a while, but then I got kind of bored a bit within the first 2 months or so, and I left it for a while. They came back to it a couple of months later, and then you know, when the DLC characters came out, when Ed came out, I was like, yeah, this character I want to play. So I was hyped about Ed, started playing the game again, and then I started realizing that I'm not into it anymore. And I was so fed up with Street Fighter 6 at some point, maybe talking about 6 months ago, that I stopped playing Street Fighter 6 or something like that. But what I'm getting at is that even when Terry came out, and Terry's a cool character. I actually made a video about Terry coming out. But at that point, I was already done with Street Fighter 6. I didn't even care to go and spend any money on that DLC, which I really don't mind doing with other games. I'll give you an example. I played the crap out of Mortal Kombat 11. That game, to me, is one of the best fighting games in terms of entertainment. Does it have stupid moves and dumb 50-50s? Of course, it's Mortal Kombat. It's never been any other way Mortal Kombat, right? But it's such a fun game. I think it's the last fun game that ever came out in the modern era of gaming, of fighting games. Such a fun game. The crypt, the challenges every week, the combat leagues. It was such a cool thing. I really enjoyed it. I still love MK11. Don't care at all for MK1 at all. But MK11, I played the crap out of it. And I bought every single DLC for that game. Every single DLC. Must have spent at least $300 in that game. Every time something came out, I would get it. I really enjoyed that game, and I thought it was made with a lot of love from the team. You know, like it was like really nice, and I always loved it. It was just a time when I was like tilted with it because of the craziness that happens once you reach God rank. But still, even with that, the game always felt really fun to me. I loved it. I loved the DLC characters, quality stuff. So if a game is not going to be good in terms of, you know, making me feel like it's rewarding competitively, at least it should have really good content. And MK11 delivered in that so much that I could go like look past all the stuff that I didn't like about it and still play ranked and play competitively and have fun. With RoboCop, with Rambo, with Jax, and Kano. Those were my 4 characters that I really enjoyed. So, going back to what I was talking about with the old school. It's really not about, yeah, you're dinosaurs, you just play old stuff, you don't like the new stuff. It's really beyond that. And understanding that is important. People need to understand that it's not just because those games are old. It's more about the reward. And if you don't really get the way that I compared the guitar with playing fighting games, for old school players, it's about the reward that comes from a lot of dedication. It's the same, like I said, I'm gonna say it again. The same thing happens with the guitar. If you only give the guitar a couple of days, a couple of months, even a couple of weeks, even a year, then you're gonna come out of that learning some stuff, but you're just gonna be strumming the guitar. You're not gonna be really making the most out of the instrument, right? But if you dedicate many years to it, every time you play it, you know you've earned it. And it feels so much better when you know you've earned the technique, you know, the skills that you've learned that allow you to make music that is as complex as you can imagine it. And that is very rewarding. And that's the same feeling you get from old school fighting games. So, with that said, let me know in the comments what you think about this topic. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you disagree? Do you love old school games? Do you play any instruments? And maybe you can relate to what I'm saying. Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.